Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is robett, and I am joined by a corporate pirate, an aggressive savage of brain intellectual gnarliness. That is Mr. Rod Snodgrass. How are you, Snoddy?
Hey mate, good.
Well, before we start flexing, let's see your t-shirt. Let's see it. Let's see it. Get it up there.
It's too hot to wear, bro, but
So good. For those who haven't had the pleasure or curse or been in your vicinity when you just throw the flippin' intellectual hammer on business and all sorts, for those that don't know, give the quick 1 minute spiel. I guess extra young buck, tech, spark, all the rest of it. Give me the quick little rundown.
well, you just did it, I think. Sort of corporate dude, way back, I guess. Got my first real break with Extra, then had a lot of jobs at Spark. My last one there was setting up Spark Ventures, which was good fun, skinny and like boxed and all of those things, and left the corporate world sort of 3-4 years ago. And these days I mainly do a whole bunch of different boards, do a lot of startup work and investing and mentoring and a little bit of consultancy around the side, mainly around the whole area of exponential organizations and how we can accelerate legacy companies and new companies using these new methodologies that are coming out of singularity and such like.
Well, for those in the tech space, they would know Extra. Now, you were CEO at, was it 24? Were you 24 or 26? How old are you?
No, sort of GM, more like, I think I was about 28 or something, yeah.
Young buck running the Extra game with the purple CDs, just making it rain all over New Zealand.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting to obviously had a yarn for you a little bit, and it's already jumped up. I will give you this credit off the bat. You're the first guest that has prepared notes with things that you would like to talk about. I don't even have really notes. I'm just talking shit for an hour, and you've got like you've gone into it. And I think the topic, I'll just read it out. Hello, robett. I hope you're having a great day. No, you didn't say that. You said, "Oi, dickhead, this is what I want you to talk about." It says the topic I would like you to cover is how different will it be on the other side, and the opportunity amongst the adversity. So before you get into it, why'd you pick that? Because obviously there's a whole bunch that's happening in terms of the medical waves, the financial waves, the community waves, these other opportunities, there's all these kind of big moving parts. Why did you want to go the difference of the other side at a kickoff point, just for context?
Look, I think the reason I wanted to do that is because, when you get hit by, it is a catastrophe, things like this, everyone immediately goes into lockdown and survival mode, which is the right thing to do. And if you're a business that's, cash is king right now. But, through all of these adversities, there is always opportunity on the other side. And I just wanted to give a bit of a perspective about thinking, the classic zoom out, then zoom in, look for where the opportunity is, because there will be opportunity here. It's not going to be for everyone, unfortunately, but for many businesses, whether you're a startup or an incumbent, this is a chance to, I guess, first of all, reset, then reimagine, then reinvent, and wait for the recovery and the rebound. And I wanted to talk a little about that because we are already seeing some changes in behaviour. I think some of it is a step change, and this will be a catalyst for many different technologies and consumer behaviours. So there's opportunity there for those who wish to take it. So I wanted to talk more about the upside than the downside, I guess.
What were those? You just said the three R's right there. What were those 3 R's you just said?
Well, I think at a macro level, what every business or person's facing here is, first of all, the survival instinct, and for businesses that's cash, and preserving cash and the ability to stay alive, and then it's thrive on the other side. And so when I think about this, if you're looking at it from an opportunistic perspective, sort of stage one's really take this as a chance to reset. And then during that, and these are somewhat sequential, but then reimagine how your business might be, looking at areas of opportunity and different macro trends that are emerging, whether they be consumer trends or government interventions or changes in technology. So reimagine and then reset, and there will be a recovery. When that is, nobody knows at this point, and there's lots of discussions around is it a V shape or a U shape or an L. There'll be a recovery. So really, taking the opportunity to reconfigure your business model for that, or maybe reconfigure yourself personally through getting online learning or what have you. So, because fortune favours the brave. And I think this is a time for people to be sensible but be brave.
Yeah, I like those stages of it. The reset bit is really really interesting off the bat. Like I was talking to, we had Cameron George on earlier today, CEO from the Vodafone Warriors, and he was saying, if there was to do one thing from it, it would have been better planning coming before like a rollout like this. Obviously, the bigger companies have these plans that they put into place, but now he's doing the reset mode of, well, what is that future thing like? What does it look like when it goes from 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, and then go? And for all these different businesses and business owners right now that are stuck at home, they're almost at a forced physical reset for them to think a bit more strategically about where they're at, where they're potentially going. So in many ways, this might be, yes, it is definitely hurting a lot of businesses, but in many cases, I'm sure this forced isolation sort of time might be giving them some great creative freedom or mental bandwidth to probably approach their businesses differently. Do you see that as it's almost a weird kind of blessing and opportunity for some, is how you think of it, right? Is
Oh,
that kind of
100%. You could be a little bit trite here, and should I will be. You know, a lot of businesses are now having to do their meetings through, remotely through using Zoom or Microsoft Teams or what have you. I've never done so many Zoom meetings, so I've probably been busier than normal, but way more productive because you're on the meeting for, let's say, an hour, and particularly for people like me who are not great at concentrating, it's you tend to have to focus because you're watching the body language on the screen, which is probably a bit harder than doing it in a room.
Yep,
And your ability to dick around on the internet while you're sitting in a meeting is a lot harder unless you've got multiple screens running, which I do have at the moment. So you've got these changes in behaviours where you've got and some of the boards I'm on where the people are generally older than me and probably not as immersed in tech. So, and all of a sudden they've had this jump shift and using technologies like Zoom, and they're having those uber moments when you go, oh, shit, why didn't we do this before? Or, you don't have to travel in a car, spend those hours in traffic, finding a car park, all of that. You're straight into the meeting with a few minutes, warning beforehand, and very productive, and you can share presentations, what have you. So I think from a business point of view, there'll be a lot of people rethinking the models going, well, that's a lot more productive. And for knowledge workers particularly, we can spend more time remote working from home. You can use the time more productively, which means you've got more spare time. Arguably, you need less people. You need smaller buildings. So, there could be knock-on effects to commercial real estate. But your ability to reconfigure your business model around just the ways of working is one of them. And then there's all sorts of other trends happening. Like I look at, my mother who's now having to do online grocery shopping and hasn't really done it before. And they have those moments they go, why haven't I done this before? So much easier. Sort of set and forget. You've got, telepresence, telemedicine, a lot more people doing things digitally that have always been available, but they've never, had the need until now. And all of a sudden they've realised just how much less friction there is in some of these online models to move to them. And I'm not saying this is all about digital and social media and what have you, but there's, you'll get some jump shifts in models. One of the businesses I'm a startup on is we're in the e-commerce space. We trade globally. We haven't really we've seen a reduction clearly, but not the massive reduction I've seen in other more traditional businesses. So I think there'll be some jump shifts here in a whole lot of areas. Like people will be thinking also about more localized production.
Yep.
Things like solar panels, the price performance is already improving, but having more resiliency and powering yourself puts, you don't have to rely on others so much. I think you're going to see a lot of technology adoption accelerate through this period, both in terms of the raw technology, but also the business models around them. So for many businesses, that's an opportunity, and clearly for some incumbent players, it's a threat. But it will be interesting on the other side, and demand will turn up again. These industries that have been hit the hardest, travel, I'm on a board in that space. It's being soul destroying in some aspects. Retail services, a lot of these businesses, hospitality, but they will bounce back because as soon as we're all allowed to move around again safely, people will want to be around other humans and do those things. But some of those businesses may not survive this, unfortunately. So you'll have attackers come in with new models that are more digital, lower cost. So that's, it's pretty interesting thing about this. What I spend a lot of time thinking about is where will the attacks come from?
That's exactly the. So I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, not too long ago, and I was saying, If you could go back and see the waves of big buckets of opportunity that existed after the 0708 global financial crisis, and you saw these momentum shifts with human behavior and technology adoption and physical shifting and all these different things that kind of affected humanity, being able to be in those right spots, if you could just stop for a second and actually just look one more step ahead instead of just that next thing of like, holy shit, my life's in lockdown, actually be like, huh, what's that next wave? Where's that next opportunity? And so I've been kind of looking at that as well. Like right now, on the backside of this, where do you think are some? And we'll get through your questions and bits and pieces in a bit, but where do you think there's going to be some potential sweet spots in the New Zealand ecosystem, either for each other on a localized level or potentially world going global? Where do you think there's going to be some interesting opportunities in terms of commerce at the end of this thing?
Well, I think in the industries that have been hit really hard, there'll be interesting opportunities there, and obviously threats as well. But so you've got tourism and retail and hospitality, probably some of the bigger ones. There'll be secondary impacts clearly on the property market, whether that's commercial or residential. So, opportunity is just the other side of threat. So it's you can adopt different mindsets to think about that. And then you've got these sort of macro trends that are occurring as well, offering, I think, a real opportunity. So things like telehealth or telemedicine, providing those sorts of services remotely. E-learning is quite fascinating now, with students not being able to go to school or universities, and there's already some great platforms out there, Coursera, Udemy. I think Stanford runs some free stuff too. So you can see these, spaces being made for solutions that are already there, but the need has never been felt as much as it will be. So, sort of a parting of the season in some ways. So some of these platforms are out there, whether it be a Crimson or something like that in the learning space. There's tons of telehealth and telemedicine platforms but the use cases are now becoming more apparent to sort of, let's call it the majority, whereas before it was the early minority adopting this platform. So I think all we're potentially going to see in certain industries is an acceleration in the that exponential take-up curve that you get with these technologies. So it's just pushing the mass market further towards the inflection point.
Yes. So exactly on that, we're talking to Clive Omerod, the CEO at Les Mills, yesterday, and he was saying, with this hit, the strategy didn't change one bit at all. We got a phone call, mate. Unless if it's Jacinda, you can answer it. If it's anyone else, stuff them.
No, Bindi, so she'll probably beat me.
Oh, no, answer for Bins. I'll put you on hold. I can talk shit. Give me.
No, that's all right, mate. That's all right.
Give her a quick little sneaky text back. It's really. It's kind of like a crazy just pause moment for everyone with it, right? You said in the email, so you said, this is a crisis where danger and opportunity intersect. How so?
Yeah, exactly. So, take Clive. I know Clive quite well because he was at Spark before he went off to Les Mills. Because fitness and health is his passion. I was actually talking to him the other day, just on text, saying this is really a moment for them to really drive their online learning platforms because they've got a lot of IP in this space. They've got the programs and all the processes, and really this is an opportunity where people are looking to continue to keep fit and well using things. I mean, one of my biggest regrets is I'm down in Whangamata and I didn't have my training bike down here to do Zwift because that's really accelerated. A lot of the guys I ride with in an analog sense on the road, which you can't do in groups anymore, are now meeting up on Zwift and training on that. So that platform's been there for a while, but it's really accelerated in terms of people getting on there and using it. Clive has exactly the same opportunity at Les Mills, really, where they've got a global brand and a platform and all of those disciplines and programs, and you can really start using exponential technologies now in terms of expanding those through whether you're using community and crowd or engagement models to drive that, because it's the classic thing they talk about in exponential orgs is you've got no heavy assets, so you're highly leveraged, which is great. Stuff on demand, so you don't need to employ people in the traditional sense. You can contract them in onto the platform almost as affiliates, which is it's a much easier model to use. You can spread that through social and digital marketing, which is highly viral and has a much lower cost of acquisition than traditional channels. So there's all these opportunities for businesses like Clive's where he can take his analog model and now hyperscale it through digital means.
Exactly, and it's exactly what he was saying. He was saying the the strategy hasn't changed one sec. It's just amplified and sped it up. And I was saying, it's basically a 3-year game plan that's been pushed into threes. And I look at, law or banking or accounting, all these other different industries where I'm wondering if brave leadership is going to use the vehicle of COVID-19 to actually be able to escalate a whole bunch of brave thinking that they wanted to do to speed up, not necessarily out of defense, but actually going on the offense for, in some ways, actually defense for survival and what's next. What industries right now do you think should embrace this type of thinking the most right now in New Zealand to help either save their business, save their employees, or potentially future-proof for the future and actually get through on the other side, but on an upswing?
Oh, the ones who've been hit the hardest. I mean, it's no regrets. You're in a I guess, a survival mode in the near term. But the industries who tend to have been hit the hardest are those industries where people will return. People will want to travel again, and tourism. They will want to eat out in restaurants. They will want to go get their hair done. They will want to go to the gym. So those industries are obviously going to struggle through this because the tap's being turned off. But when the volume comes back, there's a real opportunity through this period to rethink your business model, right size it, reset it, all of those rewords I use, but I would call it reimagine it, where you can take costs out that aren't adding value to your long-term business model, take them out, where you can create more of a platform and use digital assets, use those assets, where you can have a different, I don't want to use the word employee, but a different relationship model with people who sell or do your product. Take the opportunity to do that. So that's why I see the opportunity. I mean, some of the more startup-y growth businesses I'm in have absolutely taken this as an opportunity to quickly revisit the cost structure, interrogate their marketing, and some of them have already turned it back up. Interrogate their marketing, where they were spending it. Look at your staff models and which ones are really adding value for the longer term. Think about things like, do you really want to have a physical presence? On the other side of this, because that's a fixed cost that you can tend to avoid. So that's it's an interesting one, Rebecca, because the threat and the opportunity are just different sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
here.
it's the attitude approach.
It's a mindset. This is a mindset game we're going into here. Easy for me to say, but if you can see the way through the survival stage, and I think you really need to be thinking about where are all the opportunities to create more upside when the rebound occurs. So you come out, save your cash now and reposition, reset your business, and all of that, and have a good interrogation of the opportunity, and read a lot of stuff and get out there, because I think in many ways we'll have most of us have a little bit more time because we're not out there commuting or getting caught in
many that, unless you've got small kids running around and cats and dogs jumping over you and not space. Tim Gudsall says nice hat. Oh, yeah, and some props on the hat. Okay, Tim. We've also got a first troll of the day, and it was actually for me, not you. It says I've unsubscribed and defriended, and you are still popping up on my feed. Please stop.
Who's that, me or you?
No, to me.
Oh. It wasn't me, mate, because you didn't see my hands move.
No, it was. I won't say who it is. We'll leave him to it. But old mate, just to let you know, this isn't actually about you. This is trying to leverage my Rolodex to get good IP and thinking to the rest of the network that can actually help New Zealand businesses try and get through this thing a little bit better. So I care this much about what you think. Couldn't give a shit. It's not about you, mate. It's about everyone else. Okay. Question. I love how you've structured this so well. Like this is, you literally just make it. This isn't even a job for this. Is okay, Rod. How different will it be on the other side? Question mark.
Well, it's a good question, mate. I think
you need a quick drink of beer. Have a quick one.
Look, it will be different. I think there's no doubt about that. And I guess the longer we're in this, the more different it will be, because it gives people more time to try these new things, adopt these new technologies, try these new ways of working. So I think the longer we're in it, or the harder we're in, the longer we're in it, the more it will change behaviours for the longer term. So, and I think people personally will review a lot of things they're doing and how they go about things, because one thing this will teach you is, there's only a few things you have in life. You have your health and wellness, and you have time. So, try and stay fit and healthy and use your time wisely. So I suspect a lot of people will also be reimagining their careers and what they want to do next, and how they want to be.
And even how they want to work, where they want to, what they want to do, where their headspace is. Like I think, yeah, it's a lot more. It feels like people are going to get a lot more soulful. Is not the right word, but a lot more maybe balance with where they think their happiness could be. They might start thinking about reimagining. I think that's a nice word for it actually. Reimagining what that future could look like. Because I'm imagining for many it could be as simple as for 20 years if they get up, they get in 2 hours worth of Auckland traffic, or if you're in Auckland, if you are there, doing something 9 to 5, boom boom, and all of a sudden it's like no traffic. I've saved 2 hours. Holy shit! I took the dog for a walk. I don't have that stress. I don't need to maybe dress up as much. I can still, do whatever. I can have a bit more time to myself. Maybe I'm more effective without a bunch of people around, I think it's gonna, I think that I like that word, reimagine. Yeah, it's a great.
I've just spent X years working in a big job for the company that's now disappeared. So all of my efforts amounted to nothing, and that time's gone now. So, it's a good, I think it's a good time to just get some personal perspective, whatever that may be.
Another one here you're saying is what things are likely to change, e.g. consumer behaviors, industry, society, business models. Before you, I guess, answer that, one of the things I've been wondering is how much of this change integration that they've been forced into them with the use of technologies to create efficiency in the business, or being able to have teams communicate and keep commerce rolling, even if you're a big billion-dollar publicly listed company, is after you're back into how it was. I say old. Let's maybe say old world. Let's say old pre-corona. How much of the new shit will actually make its way back in? How much stuff will actually change? And the organizational structure of how these businesses operate. I'm wondering how much will stay to the future, or how much will go back. What's your sort of play on that with, like, do you think?
I guess we're all guessing here, but just on what I've been observing, ways of working will definitely change. I think it'll change at different paces. What's interesting is the boards that I'm on, because you meet less frequency, than you would as an executive team, for example. You have fairly set agendas, you have papers and all that done. So your ability to do that remotely through the likes of Zoom and Microsoft Teams is actually quite high, and people are learning that quite quickly. So I think you might see, so rather than having to jump on planes or turn up in Auckland or Wellington to do a board meeting, I think some boards will quickly learn, geez, it's a lot more efficient and lower cost to just use technology. Executives meetings, in big companies like ones I used to work for, maybe a little harder because you do need more time together, because you're more on management than governance. But I've had 2 or 3 meetings today with some of the startups. We've all been in different locations, sharing presentations online. It worked just fine. So I think you will see some behaviours embed faster, but at different paces and different use cases. And then that's from a business point of view. Then in terms of consumers, what's going to be interesting here, I think, is really the baby boomers who all of a sudden are getting a crash course in online. In a way.
And how old is a baby boomer? Is that 50 to 65? Is that kind of the?
They're just a little slightly older than me, because I'm an X, so they must be about 55, I think, mate.
Okay, I'll give it 55 to 70. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, someone can answer it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
a lot of them, a lot of them are tech savvy anyway, but they're getting a bit of a crash course in buying things online and all of that stuff. So that you might see this whole Uber Eats thing, which can't say I'm a huge fan of for general humanity, but you may see this accelerate in the future when people can deliver again, and online shopping for groceries and medicines and all of these things. People realize it's a whole lot easier to push a button and set and forget.
Saving time. Yep.
Saving time, saving money, and people will work out that time's more valuable than money. So save your time and get it done that way. So I can see a lot of opportunity in supply chain management, e-commerce, retailing to accelerate this sort of stuff. And as you would have seen, been watching the stock markets, Amazon initially had a dip, but they've bounced back quite quickly, because I think people have seen that this is all good for a company like Amazon. A lot of those other companies like Zoom, HubSpot, Shopify are all performing relatively well compared to more traditional sectors. So, and the markets are pretty smart, right? So they're reading these macro trends and placing their bets. And I sort of watch them on a Hatch account, and you can see a lot of those tech stocks in that, let's call it e-commerce arena, e-marketing, all that, are bouncing back relatively quickly. Now, what happens in the US, the public policy may change that in time, but we shall see.
Mike Brunel says, yep, 55 plus for that. And then John's got a question for you. He says, I wonder if Rod could comment on his view of if and how current crisis has reminded us of both our global interconnectedness and the value of local community, and what this means for how we might reimagine business and business models, etc. That is from John Campbell, founder and CEO of Our Energy Limited. Good question,
John. G'day, mate. Look, I think there's sort of two sides to that. There's this high level of global connectedness that, and I think in general connectivity terms in e-commerce, as I talked about before, will accelerate. The second, that will continue. But I think the way people have those relationships may change. There'll be some nuances there. And John's second point was really interesting. And one of the trends that Singularity have picked up is sort of the shift back to more local supply, local production, local manufacturing. So you've got less reliance on global supply chains, and also, I guess, more resilience within your national systems. And I know John's been hot on this for some time around energy and particularly community services. So, the whole thing around the likes of having more solar penetration over time. I mean, California's already been onto this. I think every house that's built in California from this year has to have solar. So there's much less of a reliance on sort of linear supply models and single source of supply. So you've got less risk in your, let's call it your supply chain. So I think John's question is a good one. It's probably more of a point, to be honest. I think we'll see more of a shift back to local. How that turns up, I don't know, because whether you've got, if you're producing out of China, people do that because of cost advantages. But then is cost the key measure going forward? It might be more around supporting local communities, sustainability, less reliance on global. I think you will generally see a shift away, which we've already been seeing, right, with the US and other countries, a little away from the global economy and more to domestic.
Local resilience in terms of commerce.
That's right, and less reliance on global systems, and looking after your farm out closer to home.
Yeah, Ihaka Ronganui says, "Great chat, guys. Weapon, yeah, it's been." Yeah, just the angles of how you're taking it. Obviously, within your ecosystem and your world, you've got to see it. You get to see on a daily basis a bunch of different verticals. You're obviously reading, you're consuming it, and so at a more of a macro level, it's just interesting to see where you see these kind of opportunities and the way culture and community is going to shift and change. And I would agree with that. I mean, even Sam Stubbs was talking about yesterday. CEO of Simplicity was talking about the idea that when their fund obviously starts to get bigger and they start owning and buying locally, their own hospitals and their own, railways or whatever it may be, they can see it, feel it, touch it, and it becomes a lot more of, I guess, like I don't know if it's a wholesome investment, but maybe it's more either tangible and or it gets the heartstrings a little or whatever it may be. But in exactly to a moment like this, if we've got, say potential immigration lockdowns and import, export, whatever, and if there is local resilience, that's actually going to be quite a amazing little safeguard to be able to roll in and exist. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think, I love what Sam's doing. It's great to see a poacher turned gamekeeper.
No, he's a changed man. I've heard
I love what Simplicity's doing. I basically agree with most of the things he says. So I think what people are doing here is they're reevaluating the concept of value, and we've been brought up through this whole consumerism age that value is the mighty dollar, that particularly out of the US, but people are rethinking that now, and I would hope that people start to value time and connectiveness higher than money. Easy for me to say, but being an ex-corporate guy, but I think people will reevaluate what value is in terms of more human values than dollar values. So and that'll resonate at lots of different levels, whether it be at a national level or a community level, or even within businesses. We've already been moving there with 360 reporting and corporate social responsibility and the triple bottom line. So this has been happening for a while, and it's just, I think it'll be another one of those things that accelerates, because no one picked this as a risk, did they, in their corporate governance risk?
I'm sure somewhere there's a thing for it. I imagine Jason Parisi of Vodafone was saying, he was fortunate enough to be on all the CEO calls with all the other different CEOs as these things have been rolling out, and just the internal real-time learnings of how each different country, because everyone's at these different timings, I'm sure that openness has actually been able to help speed up so much of the different processes and systems which they were probably putting into place to try and navigate to a better situation faster, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, JP would be a good one to talk to about this, obviously, because with Voda, particularly before they became a separate company from the group, and he'd have a good perspective. And I think what's interesting here too is there's I guess a bit of a obligation on a lot of these CEOs to work more collaboratively, horizontally through this period, because we've got a different common enemy now rather than meeting in the marketplace. You've got to save the marketplace.
What does horizontally mean? What do you mean? Work horizontally?
Working across with each other rather than competing. You've seen lots of collaboration between, Spark and Vodafone even.
Yeah, unlimited data. Yeah.
Yeah, in the last few weeks. Whereas you've seen some other companies still slavishly trying to sell product through your LinkedIn feed, which sort of pisses me off a bit. Trying to sell me things I really don't need right now.
I've flipping predicted that flipping wave of shit that's been coming in. I've been seeing it's been pissing me off. It's
and all those emails, they've slowed down now, but all these emails we were getting previously from every company under the sun telling you about what they were doing in relation to this, like I gave a shit.
Yeah. I saw a lot of those, even from like Marriott hotels I've stayed at, or all this other shit's like, we don't care what the what like.
Yeah,
but you know what it is interesting though, and it opens up a good point. Matt Stenton from Go With Tourism was talking about this is a mad opportunity where certain leaders and businesses are trying to publicly flex externally to show how their brand compared to their competitors are doing it. It's not so much that it's necessarily not that the intent's off, but there's this hint and tinge of like, yeah, well, we're reacting better than our competitors, and it's becoming not a bit of a flipping like good dirty flipping dick off between these different corporates, but there's definitely some of the emails I've been seeing, just reading it, it's like piss off. Like it's not. It's ugh.
And I think it's sad really, because anyone with half a brain sees straight through that, and people will remember who behaved authentically through this period and who continued to behave like out there trying to make a buck when people actually are trying to stay alive and keep their businesses going. So I think it'll separate the good companies with real values and real authenticity in their brands from the bad, and that will be interesting. And some companies that I think have behaved really, really well and really authentically and openly, and are focusing on their customers and their people rather than their profit and loss statement. Not to say they shouldn't be looking at their profit and loss, because ultimately they're going to need that to pay their staff and stay in business. But there's been quite, I'd say, polarized behavior by some entities.
Yeah. So it's called in the streets they call it clout chasing. So this is like corporate clout chasing on social. Andrew Thornwyn says corporate posturing. There you go, corporate posturing. Look, I think it's pretty simple. The reality is your staff and employees can see how you're actually leading, because it's going to be transparent, and you can't hide anything through this type of stuff, because the CEO is going to be there at home doing whatever, having to talk and deal with it. Alan Hucks, managing partner manager at Henry, says, is job security going to replace with income security by doing lots of different jobs in a portfolio type career? Jobs are going to replace with income
I think ultimately yes, and it'll happen in sort of different job domains. Quite different. I mean, I'm a sort of a portfolio guy now, and because I was lucky enough to get through that corporate life. But I think the concept of a job for life went a long time ago, and certainly these models have been emerging with freelancing, and companies like Fiverr and Freelancer, and we've got
gig economy shit.
Yeah, we've got the one in New Zealand now, Team.ai, who have just put out Scale. To match talent with problems. So I think the whole, let's call it employment model, has been changing for some time, and this will accelerate it, because as you move to this whole exponential type of model, gig economy, people want a much more variabilized cost structure and business model. It gives you more opportunity to flex, and that means having less large numbers of permanent staff, less fixed assets, be it premises and all of the above. So this whole concept of how I was brought up, not you, of you get a job and you're super loyal to that's gone. People have problems they need solved, and then you apply talent against them to solve them, and new contracts will emerge. And I think his question
say that again. People, what did you just say? That was real good.
Well, ultimately, businesses have problems to solve, and you need people to solve them. Doesn't mean you need to hire those people. So that's as you go forward in a business. Generally, it's an exercise in problem solving, and you hire different types of people to solve those problems. Obviously, you've got people who need to run things and keep them going, but the world is speeding up, so it's much more about who can solve the biggest problems the fastest. So
yeah.
The whole concept of portfolio is absolutely right, and in and around that too, this whole universal right to a basic income, I think, will re-emerge as well.
Let's talk about that, because that was point number 4.2 of the the document which has been sent through. No, it is saying universal basic income, the right to an income, and I think Sam was talking about some of this. He was saying you're either getting subsidies or the dollar, you're getting this. Essentially, that's some type of form of it. What's your take on this space and the idea about universal basic income in a scenario like this?
Well, if you talk to the 25-year-old me, I would have been right against it because I was brought up to be a bit of a capitalist pig. But
the old rod.
Yeah. Well, no, the young rod. Yeah, young rod. But well, look, I think in such changing times, we have to ensure the broader population against the risk, because you just don't know where it's coming from. So some people are always going to be at risk of losing their jobs and their income. So it's not about handouts; it's about a hand up and I guess a safety net for people, because things are changing so fast. And I guess the facts are out there. The older you get, the less your ability to relearn. It does occur that way. So we are going to need to rethink the right to a basic income at some level. I hate the word the unemployment benefit, because it's not really about that. It's really making sure that you've got a healthy society and everyone gets enough money to survive, and then we have the right learning systems in there. The stuff that Francis Valentine talks about a lot is we also need new learning pathways, because we're going to have to learn a lot more frequently. I'm finding now I'm having to relearn quite a bit, and it's fun once you get into the rhythm of it all. So the concept of a 3-year degree that'll support you for life, that's gone. I did my degree in the late 80s, and
I'm a lawyer and an accountant. Didn't you get both?
No, I did economics and then accounting, and then I've done a few things since. But look, it's things are changing so fast. I mean, Xero took care of my degree. So I think a lot more micro learning and learning on the job, and you'll see a swing back to the traditional apprenticeship model, skills-based learning, and so and that'll come out of this as well. So I guess when you asked at the start of it, I would hope that from this, that we don't just see the downside, we see the upside, and we take the opportunity through the middle to take the resets where we can and reimagine what we should, and then when the recovery comes, hopefully rebound and come out the other side in a better place, and also take the opportunity. I mean, I'm making the most of it. I'm getting out cycling as much as I can with my social distancing, obviously. Yeah. And going for runs and stuff, and then taking the time to think and essentially re-platform yourself.
Yep. We've got a random one, but I'm going to go for it. Sussy364 says, shout out to the Gma Edna, aka the Valentine, here on her 78th birthday. Love you so much. Well, that's great, Sussy, but this is definitely not the place and time for that. We're talking about Corona and the recession, but props to you if you're 78 and rocking through. You stay safe. Sussy, don't send her shit. Stay away from her. You keep her safe. Social distance your ass out of that situation. Anyway, thanks a lot for that. Number 5, learning and loving to do the least, separating need from want. Is it the death of the attention economy? Oh, go on. That's a deep one. Well, man, Rod, you've put some thinking behind this. Well done, mate. Have a sip of that Kingfisher, which I see hiding below the thing, which you've been just slowly just getting warm over this time as you've just been spouting this great, smart banter. Is this the death of the attention economy?
The last 5-10 years with the emergence of social media, it has a lot of goods, but also has, I think, a lot of bad things. And a lot of people out there have become quite absorbed in it and living for likes, as they call it. And they've shown that for many young people, getting a like or a response on social media gives more of a dopamine hit than LSD. And that's a bad thing, right? And they're showing pretty clear correlations to creating higher levels of depression and all these sorts of things. And maybe this is a time where people can take the time to think about what's really important here. As you see, and particularly some of the businesses I'm associated with, under severe pressure, having to lay people off, looking at all their lives, if it's potentially going down the gurgler, and then that gives you true perspective on, rather than getting 10 frickin' likes on a Facebook post that nobody really gives a shit about tomorrow. So that's this whole look at me thing. I think maybe people will start looking out a bit more again and going, wow, we can see that coming, so maybe we should look up a bit.
I think you're seeing the wave of it happen in many ways with those who never really gave a shit about much of the other community, but now that they're stuck and they have to try and become relevant in virtual, you're seeing that huge wave of trying to attention grab and posturing, maybe corporate flexing or whatever, the corporate clout chasing to try and do it. Well, people are. You can see. Instagram took off the like feature and functionality in many places, and they've been rolling that out. I think they've become very aware of it, almost because, and I'm wondering if it's this, that it's old enough now where people who either work there have young kids and they're using it and they're watching their kids maybe behavior change, and they don't like what they see, so they come into work maybe with a bit more stuff. Jeth is actually tuning in, and he says, what should the role of government be post-COVID? And he's the Chief Digital Officer at Juicy. Jeff, if you're listening, there's a link which I put, and I've tagged you in it. It says jump in. If you hit that, literally you can join the show with us right now, and you can have a banter.
I don't know, Jeff was stalking us. So what's the question? What's the role of government post-COVID?
Yeah, what should the role of government be post-COVID?
Same as it's always been, just to help run the country. I think. I actually think the New Zealand government's doing a pretty good job. They've acted, I think, pretty quickly. Some people might say maybe not fast enough, but these things are never easy to do. There'll be a lot of work going on behind the scenes, setting policies, working out how they're going to actually do all of these things in terms of allocating funds and the rules and the processes. So I think their communication's being very clear and unambiguous. Yep. When you compare it to what's happening across the ditch there with the Australians, it looks like a bit of a mess, to be honest. Yeah. I applaud the New Zealand government. I tend to vote for the blue guys generally, but I think the PM and that have responded really well. They've communicated very clearly, and they've done it with humility and authenticity, and probably setting a bit of a benchmark really globally.
Yeah. Michelle Dickinson was talking about that with the timing of it. She was saying the exact same thing of, some people were giving them shit that they didn't go fast enough. And she was saying, well, if they get the timing wrong and if they go too soon, then people are like, stuff this, and they revolt because they don't think anything's here. You do it too late and everyone's like, stuff you should have done sooner, people are going to die. It's just really the timing of how they've kind of attacked these things very fast and forceful in a public domain feels like it's been not only, I guess, accepted by the masses, but also kind of embraced to the point where people are kind of turn others if they're not social distancing, and they are trying to be being bad boys and girls, and they're not listening to the rules, because that stuffs everyone up. So it feels like, from what I can see, looking at definitely against Australia to America to New Zealand, even just those three, it feels that as a collective, the community feels it's a lot more on the same page with its intent and its commitment to what needs to be done to get to the other side. That's what it feels like anyway, just from what I've seen.
Yeah, look, you don't hear a lot of negative stuff, but there's always negative people. It's a tough job, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think they've done a good job, and throwing rocks isn't going to help anyone. So I think they've set good policy. They've acted pretty quickly. They've communicated very clearly, and really it's up to the rest of us now to play by the rules and get out of this as fast as we can.
Wider adoption of decentralized internet protocols and more intelligence at the edge generally. What's
I think just generally what we'll see here too, it goes to that earlier stuff we were talking about more localization, but in a technology sense, I think we'll see this will help accelerate the whole intelligence at the edge, which is occurring anyway with the likes of drone technology, the Internet of Things, because it builds more resilience into a system and takes away single points of failure. which you have in more traditional systems where you've got, a linear type supply chain or, as I said, single points of failure. So I think, again, this concept of fast tracking innovation, this will again support decentralized systems, much more intelligence at the edge, which gives you much more redundancy in terms of technology platforms and such like. So how that manifests is anyone's guess, but if you read the Singularity blogs and forums, they're already picking the top AI companies that will come out of this. You have to assume a lot of the things that were coming will be sped up now, and there's plenty of people way smarter than us thinking about this.
Yeah. Jith can't join us because he's been for a run. Rain check. Well, Jith, why are you going for a run? I guess it's 5 o'clock. It makes sense. Scott Hughes says, how do businesses that rely on lead generation and new business operate responsibly in this environment? Obviously, the environment has changed drastically. Do these businesses pause or continue business, albeit with flexibility? From Scott Hughes.
Oh, it's a good question. Yeah, because that one goes to values somewhat, doesn't it? I think generally, if you've got a product or a service that people want to buy and still want to buy, you should keep selling that and just think about your messaging during this phase. The one where it's a lot harder is where you've got people who are, hunters more than farmers out there pushing. Hunters, they're hard. They're pushing hard to sell something.
Well, they look like dicks at the moment, and it's become very
so
visible.
That's where you're pushing against a closed door, and you really need to think about that, because that becomes quite offensive when people just keep pushing something that it's really obvious you don't want. But these people are paid to do. People do what they're paid to do. Hunters tend to be quite, as we used to say, coin operated. That's just the psyche of being a hunter. You chase the sale. So I can see how that's going to be quite hard for people of that mindset, because what you were once rewarded for, you're probably going to be penalised for now.
Publicly, yep.
That's right. So it's tough. I don't want to be a preacher, because we used to give these people big bonuses and sales kickers for selling sales. So changing that behaviour and understanding that the macro environment and sentiments done a 180. Maybe some people haven't worked that out. I've still seen some rather large US software companies peddling their latest wares through LinkedIn feeds, and you're going, Jesus, really?
Yeah.
New Zealand's announcing mass layoffs, and you're announcing new software?
Yeah. It's just the EQ. The EQ filter on many has probably failed the test for I've seen quite a few, not only personally but I guess professionally with different businesses and that as well. Because I think you're actually right. They might think they're being smart to try and sell this shit, and they don't, just because they've worked really hard on this campaign or whatever, not realizing the context of actually you're potentially doing your brand a disservice to the entire ecosystem, and you're actually probably building up a bunch of resentment to you and your product, because it doesn't look like you have empathy or EQ whatsoever.
I have no doubt. I've registered the 3 or 4 of my brain who've cluttered up my feeds with stuff that I don't want, and I don't think anyone else does right now. It's you've got to assume they're a little bit out of touch with reality right now, or they don't care. Who knows?
You've been on the corporate side of things. Sometimes I think you know what the answer is. Telepresence Bonanza. Zoom. Yeah,
I mean, we talked about this earlier too. I think, as I said, a lot of businesses are quickly learning just how good some of these platforms are. I mean, this one you've got here is pretty flash. I've been using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts. There's, I'm assuming we've all had a crack on house party. But so, that's all sort of telepresence in a sense of word, where you're virtually having meetings and sharing presentations and such like. So I think this will just, as we talked about earlier, this will accelerate some new practices and ways of working that will have benefits. So the opportunities there is to increase those benefits by doing that more en masse.
Yeah, I 100% back that, because I've said before, it feels like usually when I'm out of New Zealand, I feel like I'm a step behind because I'm not in the room, and as soon as everyone went virtual, I was like, wait a second, it's an even playing field. Actually, maybe I've got the advantage now. My mind shift in the last 2 weeks has actually gone, well, maybe thinking about what's coming next. I was like, well, if these new systems and protocol and practices for business all of a sudden become a bit more virtual, maybe there isn't as much need. Maybe the omnipresence can continue. I don't know.
But you think about, the boardroom. What is a boardroom now? You know, a lot of the corporates, you have a boardroom. The whole thing now is, do you really need one? Because the boardroom can be virtualized. You need a meeting place. We've got platforms like Diligent where you can get all your board papers and they're updated and such like. And then you can have platforms like Zoom and Teams where you can meet. You know, Zoom integrates into my Google Calendar, so it's all there. You don't miss meetings. You can set them up really easily. There's just the benefits are pretty obvious, and the technology's pretty good. We're past the hype cycle, I think, in a lot of these and into the mainstream.
No one's questioned whether the tech would be able to keep up with even better. I mean, if you were to say 10 years ago that, you know, billion-dollar publicly listed companies would still be operating and on the stock exchange with no one in any of their offices, you would be like, what the fuck? Piss off. And actually, no one, through this whole thing, I've never heard anyone being like, oh, there's no way we'll be able to meet. It's like, no, there's all these different options. So in some respects, it's actually probably amplified even, you know, further to how new practices could potentially be for business moving forward. So it's actually kind of a cool thing, right? Like it's...
Yeah, I mean, look at the board meetings. You know, they're in my view, they're just as good, if not better. Clearly cheaper for the company because you don't have to, in the longer term, have the boardroom itself. You're not having people supporting the meeting. You're not having the good old cups of tea and lunches brought in that cost the company.
The long lunch after those dinner drinks.
Those went a long time ago, mate. Sadly, I used to love those. But, you know, that's all gone. You don't need the car parks for the board members anymore. You don't need to pay for the travel if they're flying from another city. You just the benefits are. I can't think of many downsides. You still need to get together as humans once in a while, but that becomes the thing you do less. That's sort of the thing you do afterwards. So you can just see these benefits. And look, we've had outsourced call centers in the Philippines and many of the companies I've been in all around for years. So why can't you outsource the board meetings to, you know, remote places? And the beauty of this thing, one of the good things of COVID is it's taught us it's all quite possible, if not better.
Yeah. Do you foresee, if you're a small business owner right now and you're getting pumped, stressed to shit, you didn't have a contingency plan for anything, you literally had to shut the doors, and now you're stressing about absolutely everything: payroll, staff, strategy, stock, flipping, all the rest of it. What's the first thing you'd do? Well,
my partner's one of them, so I know exactly what they do. So, look, the first thing is about survival, right? So you've got to quickly, and it depends on how much your revenue disappears. For some businesses, it's all of it. So you quickly got to look at your cost base and your fundamental business structure around, particularly your fixed costs, whether those are leases, you know, staff, what have you. So just look at those and work out what you can quickly reduce. But at the same time, thinking about the long term, because you don't want to do regretful reduction. So as I said before, you do a quick reset. You take the opportunity in that to reimagine your business model and align your reset with you know, with how you're reimagining your business model and reinventing it. And, you know, this is painful, but also see where the opportunity lies, because in many of these businesses, they are in that industry. They do understand their customers and their needs, and this has forced them to rethink their delivery model, which gives them an opportunity to rethink their cost structure and all of the above. And certainly know my partner's having a very good think about completely reimagining her business model through this period. And my brother's also...
The hairdressing game, like the services, like barbers, all sorts of stuff, right? Like there was actually funny, the Puff Daddy's son just put this little like first world problem 5-minute video, like, oh my gosh, I haven't been able to have a barber for my haircut. They call them scruffy combs, blah blah. And you just sort of wonder, like, all these different, like, you know, there's certain services which it's tricky, right? Like you can't really virtualize a haircut. I mean, what do you do, like, for certain type of things, you know?
Well, people with heads like yours and mine, we can, because we just. But
it's where we're the hat, mate.
For once, we're lucky. But yeah, I mean, the people will turn up back for these services. So it's about what does your, excuse me, what does your business look like when the demand turns up again, and what are the opportunities you can take in the meantime to rethink your delivery model and reimagine that. So I'm not saying it's easy, but you know. It is an opportunity to rethink that and how you might want to deliver that, and also look at where other opportunities turn up in adjacent models that are adjacent to your current business model.
Bernadette Jones says, what are your predictions on the entertainment industry? How will this look post-COVID-19?
Cool.
Entertainment.
Well, I'm guessing we're all watching Netflix and Lightbox and Amazon Prime at the moment with sport all off. It's interesting what it's doing. I mean, sport is one I missed. That's been hit obviously very hard, and you certainly feel for the sporting codes and people who have paid a lot for sporting content and now can't deliver it. And you've certainly seen that in the share performance in some of those companies. But when we come out the other side, I mean, what's one of the first things you're going to do? You're going to go watch a game, right? So I think sporting entertainment will bounce back with a vigor. Maybe through this period, a lot of those sporting codes and content owners will think about their content model and what their products are beyond just players on a field. Because, this is, if you had a one-dimensional model about selling your players through a game format and a physical game format, and that's been cut, this was an opportunity before this to have, thinking about whether it's digital twins or, the likes of the NBA, they're probably leaders in this, right? Thinking about diversifying your model beyond your core product. So I'd have to assume that it's going to help companies like Netflix and that who, episodic over-the-top delivery model where they've got a lot of content in their libraries that they can just sell to a large audience, with more people with more time sitting at home on the couch. I don't know what's happened with gaming. I have to assume gaming's gone up.
Blowing up.
Yeah, so and the likes of Twitch and Xbox and PlayStation, and particularly the online ones where people can get into these multiplayer scenarios, because it's certainly happening. The gamification even of sports with the likes of Zwift and that has really taken off through this period. So I think entertainment, some will suffer during the period clearly because their content or their products being taken away from them, but others will explode. And yet again, I think the guys with the new business models will be the winners. So that's sort of my view. I don't know if I answered the question very well, and then when we are allowed to go out again, we'll get back to more physical entertainment. People will be gagging, I think, to go to a game or go to a movie or go to a circuit. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it's good calls. Before we go, I wanted to talk about the potential book that you may or may not be making in the future. It's called Rod's book, The Corporate Savage, or Cry Me Effin' River, or Never Effed an Ant. And are there any of these like chapters that you'd potentially like to talk about?
These are your ideas, mate, not mine.
Well, I'll give people context. Me and Rod were having a few drinks, and he came up with some great chapter. I think you have to do it, and I kind of want to. So these are some of the quick bullet points. Almost there should be like little snippets that you just like demolish. Corporate cannibalism, small brains, small penis.
Hey, man.
Why possums are smarter than marketers. Be nice to me. I'm Gen Y. Discuss trolling, proxies, salespeople, HR, lawyers. It's so good. This goes on. It's so epic.
Drop me in it, eh?
It's amazing. I haven't said the gnarly ones.
For the next 30 years now.
I think you need to do it. There's so much, I guess, corporate. You've seen things at a young age through it. You've gone through it. You've just seen stuff at a lot higher level than I think most people. The average person that's rocking a 9 to 5, probably hasn't been in boardrooms. They haven't talked about strategy and mergers and acquisition and cost and all these other kind of crazy sort of things. So it's a little public push that I think you need to say.
On the serious note, trying to dig myself out of a hole here. The concept of corporates and businesses is the interesting one. And if you read a lot of the stuff out of Exponential and Singularity, and the way the business models are changing, whether you want to call it gig economy or exponential change, and they're all the same thing. We've just got all of these new accelerating technologies emerging that are changing the way you can deliver a business model, that are changing markets and such like. And those sorts of environments, the businesses that, I think it was David Rose that says this, any business that was designed for success in the 20th century is doomed to fail in the 21st, because back in the in the 20th century, where a lot of us sort of grew up through businesses, we used to talk about things like privileged assets and scale and scope. So having large amounts of capital gave you a privileged position in the market. Well, these days that's not necessarily true, because your business model gets attacked by asset-light players. Just look at Uber and Airbnb and all these.
Weightless threat, yeah.
Yeah, they're weightless, and their content is created for them, and they distribute content or other people's assets. It's the leveraged asset model or stuff on demand, whatever. There's so many different levers you can pull. So the whole concept of a company, I think, which are hierarchically driven pyramids with very slow decision-making processes compared to the newer companies, comes into question, right? Because they just can't react fast enough. They have very heavy assets and expensive capital. They've got large fixed cost structures.
Nice, yep.
Yeah, so you get attacked by a variable cost player. You can't get your costs out fast enough. Just if you look at Spark alone, Spark Telecom, we used to make all of our money back when I joined out of fixed line calling, across the old copper telephone, which was a vertically integrated business, and that's where we made all our money. Well, that's very jolly, I'll tell you. That's a very small part of Spark as you know it today. And back then, when we started mobile and internet, which was sort of funny things on the side back in the late 90s, I mean, Spark today is a mobile internet company, but it does a bunch of other stuff. But and if you look at our calling now, you can do that on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger for nothing. And we used to charge X dollars a minute for that 20 years ago. So I think this whole, you're going to see a lot of traditional companies at varying paces over different industries come under severe pressure because, simply put, their business models are not fit for purpose anymore. I guess you're seeing it a little bit with the airline industry. It's a bit tragic how it's happened, obviously, but those industries have struggled to make money for decades, and now they've had their demand turned off, but they've still got, I'm guessing, trillions of dollars globally in assets. I don't know where they're sitting them all right now, but so that's a perfect example of a model built for the last century. Have lots of planes and outcompete your competitors on price. Well, the new guys are coming in not 20% below you; they're coming in 50% below you because they don't have those assets. And that's a bit of sentiment in my chapters that you read out. But the game has changed. The game has changed at a corporate level, at a functional level, at a process level, at a platform level. How that emerges is anyone's guess, but you just see these so-called unicorns now. I think a lot of us were poo-pooing them when they first came out, saying, "Well, let's see if they're here in 2 years," and they just keep growing and growing and growing. Look at Amazon. Started as an online book company, then added a lot more SKUs, then they added B2B, and then they built Amazon Web Services back end to service their front-end commerce platform, and then Amazon Web Services now is a huge, virtualized cloud infrastructure business. It's just, Google, you look at all these companies, very different companies from the ones that I grew up in, where we were all focused on physical assets. Software is literally eating the world, and once you digitize a domain, you drive the marginal cost to zero, and then you get really deceptive growth. And what that does is really disrupts the existing ecosystem or business model. So once you software enable something, everything changes. Exponentially.
It's a different game. It's totally different game. Yeah,
photos.
Different game.
It used to be the scarcity there was the cost of the photo, the paper, and maybe it was $1 a photo. So we're all worried about not taking a bad photo.
Yep.
These days, the iPhone, you're just shooting stuff all over the place, right? Because the marginal cost of a photo is zero, and the solution space has moved, or the problem space has moved from the cost of print to the cost and time of finding the photo and storing the photo.
Yeah.
So the marketplace used to be paper. The marketplace now is storage and filtering, and probably using AI to declutter your storage, take out all the bad photos. So
Google Photos. Yep.
Exactly. So the interesting thing when a domain gets digitized or software enabled, the problem space moves, but that opens up a new market, and that's probably how people should be thinking. So where are practices or processes being digitized, and where does the new problem emerge? Because that's the new market.
Yeah, it's almost So if you had $1 billion publicly listed, shit, you there?
I'm here. Where are you?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, my videos looks like my videos died. Okay, you're gonna get the solo treatment. It's all you, but my voice. So it's gonna be weird, dude.
It's the
Um,
best you've ever looked, mate.
well, my screen's all black, so it's at least I'm on brand. So I'll make it two screen, then it makes you feel like I've got a friend. There you go. So, um, if you had $1 billion publicly listed company,
Yeah.
and you were talking about big hierarchical structure, slow to make change and speed, how would you restructure that business for the new world of how business should be done?
Well, it depends on what business it is and what industry they're operating in. But in a macro sense, I would be looking at ways I could have a more variabilized employment model through using, I call it staff on demand. So for there's platforms emerging all the time out there. So how could I, particularly for a lot of my knowledge workers, access talent more flexibly, particularly in the new talent domains, design, dev, agile DevOps, data science, all of those. I'd be looking at how I can leverage others' assets so I don't need to own them and have that capital tied up in my balance sheet. I would be looking at how I can use community and crowd engagement models to build a stronger community that I can then use as a channel, and whether that's through social or digital marketing or channel activation through competitions or engagement platforms or reputational scoring systems or the such like. Thinking long and hard about how you use data and algorithms. I don't like the word big data, but how you just use some basic machine learning to look for patterns in your data and understand what you can do with those in a more predictive sense. For I know some telcos do this, and next product to buy and churn prediction and doing very personalized product bundles based on behaviors using data analysis. And I don't think it's spooky. I think it's just being very consumer centric. And then in terms of running your business, whether you call it your internal control framework or operating model or what have you, it's really how do you use more, let's call it digital interfaces across your supply chain to speed up decision making and knowledge sharing with third parties as well. How do you focus on the real key numbers to run a business? This whole concept of the 5-year plan is dead. There's just he's back. There's just too much
technology.
It's awesome, eh? You're like a wizard. You're a digital wizard. There's you think about in terms of that, with so much change in the external environment, the concept of a 5-year plan is completely redundant. So you sort of need a true north, or whatever you want to call it, massive transformative purpose, a vision, to understand where you want to go and then get going. And I think this classic saying is purpose trumps strategy and execution overrides planning. That's what it's about now. Get a purpose and get going. You still need a strategy at a macro level, but having these deep plans is somewhat pointless when the world's so highly uncertain. And then experiment more. Taking really big long-term bets now is very dangerous when a world that's moving so fast. So lots of small bets, and in that process, be very design-led. Co-create with your customers, validate. Use agile, which is simply more iterative build out using MVPs and betas, and better use of data. Because one thing with all these new online platforms, whether it's Xero or HubSpot or any of those, we've got much greater access to real-time data that helps you run your business more in real time and more surgically. I think autonomy will be very key. We talked about these hierarchical organizations. When the world's going faster, you need to make decisions much quicker, and the data's there, so much flatter structures, much more autonomy.
Speed.
Yeah, radical openness. Jeff Bezos is one of the big pushes. This, share information and open up innovation within the business. They have a process within Amazon where if you say no to a new idea, you have to write a 2-page memo on why you said no. It's the tyranny of no, getting past that. Because, as they say, beware the expert, because people like me who have all this domain knowledge will see walls that are no longer there because the external world's changed faster than our experience has. So, flatter structures are better. Then finally, how do you use social platforms internally to support all of that? Slack's a great example, Zoom. Anything that can create a more horizontal, flatter organization structure that speeds decision making and helps you make decisions in favor of your customer and market faster. So those are some of the things I would do, which, long story short,
It's a lot though, yeah.
more flexible employment models, less assets on the books, more use of data, flatter structures, faster decision making, more experimentation, less long-term planning.
Yep. It's a good rant. The bro David just texted me. This chat with Rod is awesome. Agree with the changing nature of contractors versus permanent hiring, and the candidates essentially renting out their skills to clients rather than a job for life. Quote.
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
sense.
as I said, you need talent to solve problems, and so you just need to bucket your problems up into buckets and apply talent to them. It doesn't necessarily mean you need full-time employees. You may have, X% of full-time. You may have a bunch of contractors. You may have people you freelance in when you need them. I think the employment models in the future are going to be less homogeneous and much more variable.
One last question before you leave. Jith has probably had a quick shower. He's jumped back in without a video and he's asked some text. He said, we talk about environmental sustainability in many businesses today, carbon neutral, carbon zero, etc. Will COVID accelerate sustainable thinking, or is that a pipe dream?
I think it will accelerate it, just an opinion of mine, clearly. I think carbon neutral is not enough. We need to be carbon negative, probably going forward, to clean up some of the mess. And I think I hope this will give people more time to think about sustainability and the importance of that relative to other things. So, in all senses of the word, sustainability, at all levels. So, to answer Jeff's question, is I would hope so, and I think so, but I really don't know. I'm not an expert in this area. You need somebody who's a bit of a sustainability gun on this one.
Which you have to find them in the mix. I really appreciate your yarns, bro. Your time is valuable, and your brain is acknowledged and very much appreciated, just for some of the thinking of how people can navigate through this thing. The reset, reimagine piece is awesome, dude. It's really cool. Did you come up with that shit, or you stole it off Amazon or something? What did you?
No, I was just thinking about it. I think heaps will probably come up with the same words. I mean, it's pretty logical. Hey, and Robett, it's been a pleasure. Can I get an R hat since I'm a Rod? Can I get one?
Fuck. Okay, I'll tell you this. You do your book. You do your. Yeah, you can be the big spoon. It's totally fine, Rod. But I'll give you a hat if you release the book, including all of the names with all of the actual titles, and there are some gnarly ones. I think you might get sued before it even comes out. It's brilliant. I'm just thinking for us young peasants who are just looking up at those who've come before us, this would just be a great educational journey through business. So I think you need to do it. I'll give you the hat if you release the book.
I think I'll just buy a hat.
Is that you're in Whanga, right? Is it you're at the batch?
Yeah. First world problems, really. It's beautiful down here.
On that note, I'll leave you to your solo biking with no friends and your think time as you do your little isolation and the mega mansion on the beach. Live the dream, my friend.
Thanks, mate. Been a pleasure.
Shut, brother. Love your work, bro.
All right,
peace. The bro, Captain Savage, the corporate pirate. I told you he was on some gnarly shit. I flippin' told you. Awesome. That's the last one for today. Big day. Big day. We have gone to town. As I said, if you've been tuning into any of these, this is super simple for me. I'm thinking I'm like a cheerleader for New Zealand business. I just want Kiwis to win. I have this thing I've always said, New Zealand wins when New Zealanders win. And in times like this, when it is flipping gnarly out there and people are never going through some pretty tough, kind of batshit crazy times, whether it be personally or professionally, things like this matter, I feel. And it is very important for me that I flipping roll out the Rolodex, stack up the brains, and let them be able to share a bunch of insights with that. So even just that there, the whole idea of like a forced reset, reimagining everything is cool. Bear, Tim, and Andrew, appreciate it. Rye, who's all jumping in with comments, thanks so much. I haven't actually done anything. I'm just literally talking shit with my homies. Dale said, "What up? Great chat, Robett. Love your work." Shot Dale. So that's what's up. We've got more coming. We've got plenty more weapons who are going to be in the mix. I'll just click there. plenty more weapons who are going to be in the mix coming into the show over the next couple of weeks. My goal with this is very simple. I'm going to just keep interviewing weapon after weapon after weapon, helping share their thinking to all you all. So enjoy the day, team. And even though I am halfway around the other side of the world right now, I still feel very much at home helping my friends. So enjoy the day, team. I'll see you soon. Whiskey finished. Day is finished. All right. Now I get to my regular job, my 455 emails, which I haven't done because I've been talking shit all down this thing. See you soon, Tim. Deuces.